Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Health and Fitness Show with Tracy. I am bringing a new guest today, but we'll introduce her in just a moment. Some of you guys know me. Some of you guys are old listeners, new listeners. And so just so you know, I'm Tracy Markley, Tracy L. Markley. I have been in the fitness industry for almost 30 years, an author of 14 books, author of 2 courses for the fitness industry. And I was the host of the Health and Fitness Show with Tracy on KXCR Radio in Florence, Oregon. Stopped doing that and I recently brought it back to a podcast. And today our guest just happens to be someone from Florence, Oregon, who's also an author. And I'm going to introduce her first, and then I'm going to bring on more of her bio after we introduce her. So welcome, Judy.
Thank you. I am very honored to be here. And Tracy's been a friend for years. Thank you.
And I moved to Oregon in 2013, and we worked together training. So her name is Judy Fleagle, and I'm going to share her bio right now. So, and Judy, also, we'll go into that World War II. She's helped me edit my books. 2 of my books she helped edit: Tipping Towards Balance, Fitness Trainer's Guide to Disability and Walking, and Stroke Recovery, What Now, and Physical Therapy Ends, But Your Recovery Continues. And I kind of met her through that. Another editor introduced me to her. So, and Judy is 82 years old, and she's still publishing books and writing and editing, and I think that's fabulous. So, Judy Fleagle graduated from college with a major in elementary education and a minor in English. She made good use of them by spending 22 years teaching first and second grades in Los Gatos, California, and 21 years as an editor staff writer for the Oregon Coast Northwest Travel magazine in Florence, Oregon. After retiring in 2009, she embarked on a third career as an author. She is known for her Bridges books, Crossings, McCullough's Coastal Bridges. Did I say that right?
McCullough's
Coastal Bridges, and The Crossing Guide to Oregon's Coastal Spans. She's a longtime docent at the Scioto Pioneer Museum. She has written the definitive history of Florence, Around Florence. Her bestseller, The Oregon Coast Guide to the Unexpected, appeals to the public's fascination with the odd and the unusual. 2 of her personal books, Devil Cat and Other Colorful Animals I Have Known, Other Colorful Animals I Have Known, has 5 stories about animals she rescued that became wonderful pets eventually. And then the Cancer Blog is a week by week account of her journey through chemo back in 2014 and 15 when she battled late stage lymphoma. She tells it with humor and upbeat attitude. She has a good bio, so you're going to have to keep listening. Nearly every week for the past 12 years, Julie posts on her blog, Crossings Author. She posts because she enjoys writing, and 3 books are a result: The Crossing Guide, The Cancer Blog, and now her newest book, Living to the Fullest after age 70. Her website, and we'll get more to it at the end too, check out crossingsauthor.com. Then there's her community involvement. Judy is a docent with the Scioto Pioneer Museum and has been since 2002. She is also an owner member of the Florence Backstreet Gallery since 2016. And in 2011, she co-founded, along with Connie Bradley, the Florence Festival of Books, which is awesome, that is held each September and continue to be involved for the next 12 years. Judy does indeed live life to the fullest. So welcome again, Judy Fleagle. And she's also an editor. She's edited my books, and she's still edited. So welcome, Judy, again.
Thank you. Thank you.
So first, tell me about your newest book. I didn't know you had your newest book. I just got that in your bio when I got that from you.
Well, my newest book is called, like you mentioned, Living Life to the Fullest After Age 70. You also mentioned that I do a blog post, which I have done for 12 years, ever since my first book, McCullough's Crossings, McCullough's Coastal Bridges. And I started the blog to market the book, but then I just continued writing it. I wrote about the book, I wrote about my health, I write about whatever happens, it's sort of like anytime anything bad happens now, I think, oh, how can I figure this into my next blog post? And I'll tack it with a little bit of humor, look for some photos. Anyway, so the end result of my blog post is that I've done 422 over the past 12 years. And I went through those and I took the 50 best ones, according to me. And some of them are heartwarming, some of them are humorous, some of them are outrageous, and some are even serious. And I put together.
I have to interrupt for one moment. When I met her, I think it was before I met her in person, or I forget because there's so many crossings with each other. One of her blog posts was about her cat tripping her, and she fell into the dining room cabinet, and it broke the glass. It was a whole story, and it was like sad but hilarious. And she made it really funny. I'm like, oh my god, is she okay? So she writes really funny about her stories. So
Yeah, that
before you start the book, share that story about the cat and the falling.
Okay, that blog post is in my new book. It's one of my favorites. It's called The Ups and Downs of a Single Day. And what happened is I fell in the kitchen and I fell against a cabinet and I fell and landed on my rear, and my head hit the cabinet and it broke the cabinet. After a few minutes, I realized I was fine and I got up and I finished fixing lunch. And then that afternoon, I did my last 2 chapters for my book, The Guide to the Unexpected. And so it was a day I'd been looking forward to because I finished writing my book. But I also fell and, could have really hurt myself, but I didn't. So I referred to it as, it was the ups and downs of a single day. And it was just, one of those days.
Oh, you read it funnier because it was the cat that you tripped over the cat, right? The cat ran under you or something.
Well, I was reaching up to get something out of the cabinet, and when how when you reach up, go up on your toes, and the cat, meanwhile, had maneuvered close to me, and his tail was under my ankle and under my foot, and so as I came down, I tried to, get off his tail, and as I lost my balance, fell, hit the cabinet, and of course, because my head hit the cabinet and broke it, I received all kinds of Facebook and email messages from friends and relatives and family who said, "We always knew you had a hard head, Judy."
Well, you see the picture she posted of the broken cabinet, you're like, oh my god. But yeah, it's funnier when you read it. It's funnier. I was cracking up, but I kept thinking, is she okay? And you were in your 70s at the time.
Well, it was 2018, so that was what, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would have been like 76.
Yeah.
76. Yeah. I was no youngster.
So let's go back to your newest book. Then we're going to go talk about from your first book, because
Okay.
you also, if you ever been to Florence, Oregon, or if you're there, I'm assuming a lot of the listeners will be from Florence, Oregon. When you walk around the town, especially around Bay Street, there's the platforms that has like the little history photos. I forget what you call them. You help make those as well, right? You help put those together.
Yeah, they're interpretive signs all around. They talk about the history of the town, the history of the area. They talk about the bridge. And so the ones that have to do, and they also talk about the flora and the fauna of the area. The ones that have to do with the history, the ones that have to do with the bridge, I wrote.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure they had accurate information. If they're going to be informative plaques, then they really should have accurate information.
Yeah. I should really be ready. If those who've seen this picture, I'm not going to lower it now because it will mess up everything. But it's my dog Wasabi in Florence by the Slave Bridge. It's a really pretty picture, but if I go like this to the camera, it's going to mess it all up right now. Okay, so your latest book, what number book is that?
It's my 7th book.
Seventh book. Okay. Tell me about that.
Okay, so it has 50 chapters broken down into 12 different categories. Now it's not chronological. It doesn't go from then till now. It's broken into sections such as promoting crossing, my first book, memorable book events. Because of that book, the bridge in Reedsport, the Umpqua River Bridge, was finally dedicated. That's a bridge that was built in 1936, finished in 1936, and it never. They planned a dedication ceremony, but it was postponed, and then it was postponed again, and then indefinitely, until 75 years later, when my
Wow.
book came out, and we had an all-day celebration. And it was incredible. I mean, we had a parade, we had speakers, we had a big cake with a picture, and we had my PowerPoint presentation where I read from my book all the different things about how it was postponed. Then I looked up and said, until today. And then I gave my program. So
That must have made you feel so good, so wonderful. It's like you must have been like, wow.
yeah,
I
it's
didn't that.
and that's just one of about, let's see, that particular memorable book experiences that has like 7 chapters of similar type stories. And then there's a section of stories called most intriguing titles, one of which is last week my throat was slit.
Say that.
And
It's what?
last week my throat was slit. And that was simply, I remember going into the post office and the gal there at the counter said, "So how are you?" I said, "Well, last week I went to Eugene and my throat was slit." Suddenly it's quiet in the post office at me. And so I had to explain, and I still had the big bandage there. And I had to explain that I had a basal cell carcinoma removed. It was all of about 1/4 of an inch, and they removed it. So it was no scandalous event happened.
It wasn't a crime.
It wasn't a crime. And then I have I also have a whole section on unlikely topics that I have written about, such as in praise of refrigerator magnets. When I travel a fair amount, and when I do, I get the things that people usually get. You get a painting, you get pottery, you get books, you get various things to remember various places. Well, after a while, your walls are full, your shelves are full, and you're at a point in your life where you're not collecting all kinds of stuff anymore. So I get refrigerator magnets. I put them on the refrigerator, and you see them every time you get in and out, and you remember your trip. And I think it's a perfect souvenir.
Mhm.
I also write about some things that are. I have one section on a serious note. I write about the why behind my cancer. I am the only person in my family, which is a long-lived family. My mother lived to be 105, my dad into his 90s, all my aunts and uncles into their 90s. So cancer is not in my family, and you usually get it through heredity or environment. But I did teach in a school that had asbestos tiles,
Oh,
asbestos drapes, asbestos in various places, and I was there for 22 years. And there were other teachers that were there for 30 years, 40 years, and another one 45. Her whole career was there. And we all taught the lower grades in the old wing. Well, all of us got the same kind of cancer, and I'm the only
really?
one that survived.
Wow,
I would,
that gave me the chills.
yeah. So I mean, that's a little more. That's one of my more serious ones.
Yeah.
And I have my special favorites, one of which is the ups and downs of a single day, which I already talked about. And another one is a life of, let's see, a life of white privilege. Who knew? However, now at the age of 82, I not only have a life of white privilege, I've got old lady privilege. times in the last 2 years when I've been pulled over for going too fast, you know, they just give me a warning. They don't give me a ticket anymore. So, little old lady comes, it has its benefits. And let's see what else. So anyway, I also have a family trip of a lifetime. There's 3 chapters under that section. My brother, sister, and I, we are all very close in age. I'm 82, and my brother and sister will turn 80 and 81 in a month. So we'll be very close, 80, 81, 82. Well, several years ago, my folks both died. We have their ashes. My dad wanted to have his ashes spread on the old homestead in Montana. My mother wanted to have her ashes spread with my dad's. So eventually, my brother, sister, and I went to Montana back in 2021 to spread the parents' ashes on at the homestead. And we met with other relatives in Montana. So we had sort of a family reunion, and we all went there and we did spread the ashes. And it was the most incredible experience. We hadn't seen each other since 1992, 29 years. So it was a great family reunion. We got to spread the ashes. It was a fabulous experience. And then my brother and sister and I all went on to see Yellowstone and then the Tetons. So I called it a family trip of a lifetime, which is exactly what it was. Of course, we were in Yellowstone in the last 2 weeks of August, which means we were not the only ones there, which also meant that when our were driving along the road, we were going so slow because of the traffic that a buffalo walking alongside the road was walking faster than the cars.
And your mom and dad were with you guys in spirit. And they probably enjoyed that too.
Yeah. So anyway, so the book covers a little bit of everything. And I ended with with 3 photo essays where it's called Where Photos Mean a Lot. And one was about my cat, Sir Groucho, who was a really special cat. And a rescue.
I held him. And
he was a rescue that lived to be 20 or 21 years old. And he was just fabulous. And then only thing I collect besides refrigerator magnets is Christmas tree ornaments. And I have some from students I used to teach with, from places I've traveled when I was on assignment, when I worked for Oregon Coast and Northwest Travel magazines. I have some from friends. I have some from travels with my sister. And so I have photographs of those, and I can tell the slight little story behind each one. And then I end the book on a happy note where I arrive in Bakersfield to see my family on about flights between Eugene and Bakersfield. You always arrive at midnight. So I'm there in the middle of winter. It's cold, it's dreary, it's winter. And I arrive, I get off the plane. There's like 8 of us on the plane. It's, not big flights going to Bakersfield. And there's only about 10 or 12 people in the airport to greet people. But there's my sister standing with a sign that says legal, as if there's a big throng of people and I'm trying to recognize a person I don't know. And of course, it's my sister. And it's just the funniest sight in the world to see her standing there with this sign with my name on it, with this totally expressionless face. And I get off the plane and it's just the funniest thing in the world. So I end the book on a happy note with both of us looking at each other, laughing hysterically.
Nice.
And it was a serious time, because at that time my mother was about 100 and we were having to make some decisions about her care. And so it was a serious time, but you would have thought it was, you thought it was the Mardi Gras or something, the way we were laughing. Anyway, so the book, it covers a whole range of topics.
And when does this book publish? Is it publishing like right now?
Well, I went through the 5th draft on Monday. Today, while I'm doing my laundry this afternoon, I'm going to be going through the book. I think it's a clean copy. I think there are no more mistakes. But as a fellow writer, you know that that isn't always true. So I think there are no more mistakes in it, but it's going to be 10 by 7, horizontal, 234 pages, 248 color photos. And you know, every time you have anything, a caption, a credit, every time you write anything, there's the possibility of it being wrong. It could be spelled wrong, it could be the wrong font, it could be the wrong size, it could be the wrong, all kinds of things.
Well, you know
So,
what I learned by because I'm working on my 15th book now, but I was on I don't remember what number book. And what I realized when I was get the book back, because you have someone, you edit it, you work on it, you do it, then someone formats it. When I look at it formatted, I noticed because the words would be good before then. What I realized, I think sometimes people format, they may knock a word off, and maybe they were writing the word back in wrong. Because I'm like, we spelled this, that was not there before. Because I remember my first book, I talked about walking gait, GAIT. You know, we all edit it, we searched it, I had people working on it, and I would go to the file, and I would search the word gate spelt wrong, GATE, like a fence gate, and that word would never show up. So when the first print came out, and I think on the second page it was spelled wrong, I'm like, how is that possible? We checked it every angle. And then I think I started checking it really good again after it got formatted, because I think formatters sometimes format a word wrong, they spell, and they must be changing because, you know, if you have 6 people editing your book and you look for the misspelled word, it's not there, then it appears out of nowhere. I'm like, what?
anything is possible, you know, anything
Yeah.
is. So anyway, today I will give it a one last look over, but I don't expect to find anything. And we think we're going to be sending it to the printer next week, and so it should be available, I would guess, June 1st ish, right around the 1st of June anyway.
And
Maybe
say the name again. What's the name of the book again?
it's Living Life to the Fullest After Age 70.
That sounds fun. What's on your cover? Is it a picture of you, like dancing?
On the cover, oh my goodness.
Or you could surprise us, but
Yes, it's that's where is it? I've got it. I really do.
and when people want your book, they go to your website and order them, right?
Oh, I can order it from my website. Absolutely. Well,
Okay. And
here
you're
it
usually in bookstores.
here it is, but it's this has got markings. It's got corrections.
Oh,
And
good, you are on the cover. That's a fun cover. Oh,
yeah,
that looks great. That's going to do well like your other ones, I can tell.
yeah. And the picture
Good.
of me in the corner, I've got a sweatshirt on that says being the same age as old. It's weird being the same age as old people.
That's fun. That's going to do good.
So
So I know the last book, and I have it in my cupboard over here. I should have brought it out. I didn't think of pulling it. It's in some place over there. Um, you're the one to the unexpected, the Oregon Coast Guide to the Unexpected. That was a fun book too.
oh, that's my bestseller.
That's been your bestseller?
It is.
So Judy can correct me if I'm wrong, but so she uses a publisher. She will go on the road and drive to bookstores and get her books in stores, and it works.
Yeah. So what I do, yeah, what we do is sort of a hybrid publishing. I write the book, my publisher edits it. I sort of check it over after that. Then he lays it out, he formats it. And all my books have photos, so it's more than just flowing the print.
Yeah.
And then it goes, then I become the editor after and that's what I've been doing the last several weeks. You know, there was the first draft. The first draft is so exciting because all those photos you've got, and all that edit you put together, you finally see together. And it actually begins to look like a book. And that is
And
terrible.
it's so exciting at that point too, isn't it? Like, it's like if you're not a writer, you don't get that. But if you've written, you're like, yeah, it's a real exciting feeling.
And then so I've gone through it like, and after the first go around, there's 50 chapters. This is a big book. And of the 50 chapters, I asked him to redesign 9 of them, knowing that he would probably scream loud enough for me to hear. And he lives on the other side of Florence, many miles from me. But he did it. And the book is better for it. And I just love everything about it right now. Every page, everything about it, I just love.
And that's good advice if people are writing books and working on projects is don't not change something you want to change because you're afraid you're going to upset somebody else. Because in the long run, you want it the way you want it, and it means something. And you just have to, if it takes you an extra month or 2 to get the book out, because sometimes you're just so excited to finish it, but you're like, no, slow down. I really want this changed. And so, yeah, there's advice for you writers out there. Don't rush through stuff.
Right. So this will go back and forth until we don't see any more changes. And I think we're just about at that point. And so it should go to the printer next week and then be out by the 1st of June is my guesstimate. So anyway,
and so when you first publish a book, is that when you just start driving to the bookstores? You get them all, you get your books? Because I know, because you get them like boxed to you and then you just start driving around. You drive to California to just put books. You drive all over the place, don't you?
I do. I put thousands of miles on my car every year that are business miles selling books. When I first did Crossings, I wrote the book. I did not realize I would have to sell the book. So when Dick Smith, who was involved with me, asked me what was my marketing plan, I gave him a blank look. And then I contacted writer friends that I knew, and I got some ideas, and I wrote some stuff down, and it covered half a page. and basically it just said contact people, call a few businesses that might sell books. And I was thinking of Florence and maybe a little ways beyond Florence, but it was a very steep learning curve that first year after the book. And
that year was 2009?
11.
2011.
I wrote it in 2010 and then 2011. And it was another writer who said he'd like to put a couple hundred books in his car and hit the road. And so I started doing that, but I always call ahead because nobody likes it when somebody comes in and tries to sell them something and they're not expecting it. And
that's
also
smart.
the person you want to see might not be there. So if you call ahead and they're expecting you, it doesn't have to be, I'll usually say I'll be there midday or afternoon or morning. I won't pin myself down to a specific time because when you travel anywhere, you don't know what the road conditions, the weather, traffic, etc. And so you have to, give yourself some leeway. But anyway, I go along with what the standard is. I give a 40% discount. I'm there with my books. I have the book signed. And I have the invoices ready, so when I can just pop in, drop it off, and leave if they're really busy. And I will often hit, I will often go like to Astoria, and I'll hit maybe 10 places up and back, or maybe 15 places if I go south, and I'll try to do it in one day.
So how many? So this is the thing with Judy's books. Most of your books are books that are going to be around for years.
Oh yeah,
they're not.
All my books are nonfiction.
Yeah, and the books on the bridges and the books on the historical things and Oregon. I mean, they're going to be around forever, and I think that's really cool. It's super cool.
Well, yeah, and McCullough, who was sort of my hero, McCullough Bridges, McCullough the designer. He wanted his bridges to be efficient, economical, and elegant. And it's the elegant that's withstood time. And he said he wanted his bridges to be something he wasn't. He said he knew they were going to outlive him, and he did not want to be embarrassed by them. Well, my books are going to outlive me, and I don't want to be embarrassed by them. So I as an editor at a magazine for 21 years, you try really hard to make everything accurate. And so I try really hard. I'm sort of super duper extra picky about that. So I want to make sure everything is accurate. I want to make sure I have permissions when I use any kind of photo or anything. And if I can't get a photo I want, I have a friend who's a great artist, and I'll ask her to do an illustration to go with what I want. So one way or another, I get what I want in my books.
That's good. And that's what it should be. And I think it's also amazing too that so when a lot of times when people retire, they just retire. But retirement sometimes sounds like, I don't say the end of life for people, but it's like everything you've done as a career wise or putting yourself out there learning and doing things. Some people that stops for a lot of people. It's just like, okay, I was a school teacher and that was it. But that wasn't your whole story. You're still doing it, and you may write more books, huh? Do you have a plan for another book already?
Well, somebody asked me the other day, they said, "So, Judy, when are you going to do Living Life to the Fullest After Age 80?"
Oh, that's
And I
perfect.
said, well, I have to get this one out first. We'll see. We'll see. And my publisher, Bob Thera, my publisher, when I saw him at a reception for an artist, Rosie Clark, here in town a year ago. And he said to me, Judy, I'm retiring. I've done my last book. And I said, I have this idea for a book. And he said, we'll talk. And he wasn't exactly thrilled with the idea of doing another book, but he didn't want to leave me in the lurch. However, as a person who was in charge of the Florence Festival of Books for years, I know a lot of publishers who would love to publish any of my books. So, and I have a track record. So I didn't really have to worry. But this is our 6th book to do together, and it'll be his last and possibly my last. I don't know. My mother lived to be 105, so who knows?
That's what I was going to ask you. How old did your parents live to? Obviously, it's really good genetics in your family. And
so
you might have, after 80, after 90, after 100, even if you're writing the book in your 100, you may have like 5 more books out of you.
No, I just have no idea. And then also another way I market my books is I do PowerPoint presentations. I have done, probably 75 total.
But where do you do them at? Where do you share them? At libraries?
I thought they would all be at bookstores, but I've done them at bookstores, libraries, event centers, what do you call them? Assisted living facilities.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Just all kinds of different places. I've done them at Hatfield Marine Science Center, Cape Perpetua. I just almost anywhere I've done them. But I thought they would all be in bookstores, but that's just been one of the venues that I've done them.
Do you still go to? I was trying to think this on a podcast the other day. The small town where you drive past the Sea Lions Cave and you do your little. What is that little town called?
Yahats.
Yahats. I couldn't remember it the other day. So do you still do that during the summertime when they have their farmers market?
I was a part of the farmers market there for 6 years in the summers, and the COVID hit, and they didn't do it for a while. And then when they started up, it was just farmers, just food stuff. And then they gradually let others in. And I've and since COVID, I've been doing, I know it's a Sunday market. And since COVID, I've been at the Siuslaw Pioneer Museum on Sundays because
Okay.
nobody else seemed to want Sundays. So I haven't gotten back to that. And um, I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and come home about 4 o'clock.
She
And
works hard,
yeah,
but you like it. Well, except
I
for
do.
getting isn't.
But going up there, you have to sit. If you participate in that market, you have to be able to do it yourself. You can't expect to say, "Oh, poor me," and have everybody come and help you. You have to be able to do it
Set
yourself.
up your books,
So
carry your books.
so I set up my canopy. I carry out my heavy cement blocks that I anchor my canopy with. And my canopy was a 5x7. It wasn't the big 10x10, so I could handle it. And then I set up my books, and I'm there, and I go around and buy my goodies that I want before people start actually coming. And I go to the, what is it called, bread and roses, and get my latte and a little bear claw, and then I'm all set. And and then it goes from 9 until 2, but people are there by 8:30.
Yeah.
And so, and then it goes till 2, but if there are lots of people there, it'll stay open later until it thins out. So I don't usually get home before about 4:30. So it's a long day, but
It's
I
a lot.
always did well there.
Yeah. I remember going there a couple of times with Wasabi and seeing you there. And
Yeah,
walking
and
and
people used
stuff.
to come with their dogs. I have never seen so many interesting dogs in my life. I saw Italian miniature greyhounds. I saw, these big, the dogs that rescued people.
The
Big,
mount the mountain Bernese mountain dogs? No.
yes, there was a Bernese mountain dog that came. I was sitting on a chair and it came up, and it was like we were head face to face, and his head was as big as mine. I mean, it was hi there, fella, as he licked my cheek. So it was just a fabulous place for
Yeah.
seeing and meeting dogs.
And that little town has a little cool vibe to it when you're there. It's just different.
Well, I think it's the epitome of quirkiness. I just love it. It's got Whale Park there, which has got a whale's tail and a hump in the ground, and a recessed sprinkler that spouts every few minutes in the summer.
Why do we
If you know where Ona's restaurant is,
Yeah.
right across, just before you get to the Drift Inn. The
I
whole
remember going there. I remember going there once with one of the girls in town, and I think they stopped doing it. But when you cross the street, they had a little bucket with flags. And when you cross the street, you
yeah,
pulled this flag. It was like when you carried this flag across the street. It was like little orange flags, like caution. I was just cracking. I'm like, where am I? I've never seen such a thing. And we did it and took photos and was laughing. Then I think they stopped doing it.
well,
I heard.
I think they still have them, but most people, not everybody uses them.
Oh, it was
But
hilarious.
they also, ODOT came in and they made a lot of changes in the road. The crosswalks now are much more defined. You don't need to
Okay.
have people waving a flag to say I'm going to cross the
Yeah.
road. Um, but so some of that small town folksiness is gone because they've made it more formal, so to speak. You
Yeah.
know exactly where the crosswalk, sort of what they did in Florence also. So they've changed the road configuration
Be a little more safe for people.
it's actually safer, but I kind of like the old time
Yeah,
way.
the old stuff's fun. It's unique. Okay, so you did your bridge book. What was your second book?
Well, the first book was Crossings. It tells the history of the bridges, what happens when you have the right man at the right place at the right time. The second
Okay.
book was a small guide that takes you down the coast bridge by bridge. And then the third book was the history of Florence,
And
which,
that one is going to be around forever too.
well, that was through Arcadia. That's the only one I did not do with my publisher here in town. That one I did with Arcadia Publishing. And it's the sepia toned book that you see in many, many places. And I was asked, anyway, I'm a docent at the museum. I knew a lot of the old timers. I'm a writer, so I was the one asked to write that book. And of the book's 187 photos, 150 come from the museum. And
Oh,
I just think it's a fabulous history of Florence.
yeah.
It was not a fun book to write because everything is so prescribed. It has to be 127 pages. It can have between 6 and 10 chapters, and every single title can be between 5 and 7 words, and every caption can be between 50 and 72 words. So and the introductions can be up to 150 words. So you spend all your time or half your time counting words. Your machine can count the words for you, but you're constantly counting and cutting and counting and cutting. And so that's you've
That's
heard
a
of
lot of
pace.
work. I
You've
don't
heard
think
of
people realize writers work hard. That's hard work because you have to make sure you don't, especially that you did. You don't want to
Yeah,
write something that's not the fact, and someone comes back and says that's not true. You got to, there's a lot to it.
yeah. And on this one, it had 187 photos, most of which came from the museum. And so they had a specific way they wanted them formatted. And so I had to hire somebody to do that because the museum didn't have all their photos. They didn't have hardly any of their photos digitized. So I had to hire somebody to do that. And they don't pay you to write the book. So it's just a lot of work.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, I think that Around Florence is the best of the books out there on the history of Florence. And I've edited the other two, so I know.
so 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 let's talk. I want to talk about that. I know you work at the gallery, but let's talk about. I love this, and I've participated a couple times. And before COVID hit, you actually asked me to be in the board and be part of it. And then COVID hit, and we didn't do them for a couple of years. The Florence Festival of Books, which is the largest festival of books in Oregon, right?
No, it's not the largest. It's probably stock in Portland.
The Portland one, that's right. But it was so wonderful. I loved doing it. And I was gonna go back. It's every year in September, and I was gonna go back last year, but my injury was here. Plus my parents have passed away. I've probably 5 clients I've had have passed away. It's just too much passing. I thought my back can't handle the traveling. So I don't think I'm emotionally ready to go. I'll probably cry everywhere I turn around. But I'm hoping this year or next year I can get there
I hope so.
again. So the Florence Festival of Books, I loved it. So I did before she shared that I did the LA Times Festival of Books
That's
last year,
right.
right here, and it was fun. It was different. It was the USC camp. It was wonderful, but the booth was $1,400.
Ah,
That's a lot of money. I thought I'll go do this once. What we did $68 booth in Florence. So it's different world here. They don't have a lot of small things, but it was fun to be there. But a lot of people do. I didn't sell a whole bunch of books. A lot of people went and bought them on Kindle because I have them on Amazon. So it's a whole different thing. Plus, when you're in the small town Florence, everybody came knew me. We kind of all know each other in a way. You meet new people, but it's a whole different world. But I really liked it, and I haven't found anything like that since. But I did find a farmer's market that's not too far from here, like 10 minutes away, 5 minutes away.
good.
That about as big as the one in Yachat, maybe about the same size. So it feels more old towny. It's like 40 or $60 to have a booth. So I have my tent like yours, but it's bigger. I got the 10 by 10, and I haven't done it yet. It's on Sundays because we're like in the 40s and we wake up in the morning, and that's a little too cold for me to go sit with my spine injury. So I got to wait till it warms up a little more. So I'm looking forward to something that's more small town feeling because I liked it.
Yes.
So yeah. So anyway, so tell us about the Florence Festival books.
Well, the Florence Festival of Books will be in its 13th year this year. And well, actually, it's the 14th year, but we did not do it in 2020 because of COVID. But we only missed 1 year. We came back the second year in 2021. We
Oh, you
didn't
did?
have,
Oh, I thought you missed two. Okay.
well, it was very iffy up until 3 days before. We didn't know for sure because
Oh,
because the county would say, well, you yes for big events, no for big events. You had to do this, you had to do that. Everybody had to wear a mask, whether they were a participant or an attendee. We had all the tables, at least 6 feet
apart.
apart. So we
Oh,
only had half as many people as normal. So it was a different situation. But
yeah.
everybody that came that year, whether a participant or an attendee, was just thrilled to be there.
To get out
And
of the house and have something to do too.
yeah, and then the last 2 years, it's been more back to normal. But
Oh,
we
that's
last 2 years, okay, 12, this is okay, 13 years ago we started it. Connie Bradley and I started it. And we started it because we were talking in front of Dick Smith, who is sort of a doer. He gets things done. And we said, oh, we went to this book fair, and the wind came up. It's outside. The wind came up. It knocked over some water bottles, and books got wet, and it was too hot.
and the
Or
windstorms
oh,
like to blow things.
yes, wind is a problem on the coast. And so anyway, Dick says to both of us, so put on your own book fair. And we just sort of blew him off and each went our separate ways. But he went to the event center, and he and the event center director put down on October 1st to have a book festival. And then Dick called me the next day and said, we're going to have a book festival, and we think that you and Connie would be really good co-chairs for it. Huh? So anyway, we put him and the director of the event center on the committee. And for the next 4 years, they were on the committee and helped. And we had no idea what we were doing. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can find out what other book fairs are doing and pick what you want. And
Yeah.
so we thought we'd get maybe 20 authors. Well, we got 60 authors that first year. And we
60?
got up 60.
Oh, nice.
Zero, yeah. And we got up to where we would, and always we had authors and publishers, not just authors. And we got up to a point where we were having as many as 85, maybe 10 publishers to about 75 authors. And now we're cut back. These last 2 years, we've changed the format to have it, instead of a 2-day event where we had a keynote speaker and a panel discussion on Friday and the book fair on Saturday. We're now doing it all in one day, where we have the panel discussion within the time of going on at the same time as the book fair. And then we had this year, for the first time, we had 2 workshops going on at the same time. And then after the book fair was over, we had the keynote speaker. And this year, I was the keynote speaker. And
But that's something that probably worked out good to do it that way, huh? One day only.
well, it works out really good in some respects. It costs us less because we only have to rent the facility one day instead of 2 days.
Oh, yeah.
Um, it also makes it easier for people coming from afar because they can squish it all into one day. They don't have to spend overnight if
Yeah.
they want to attend everything. So having the keynote speaker last, sometimes people leave and don't come back to hear the keynote speaker. So that was
Oh,
and
yeah.
also what we did was we put in the event center that can be divided into 5 sections. Well, we always had all 5 sections be the book fair, and other events happened elsewhere. Well, this year we took 4 sections for the book fair, and the 5th section was the space for the panel discussion and the workshops and the keynote speaker. So you didn't have to fill up a big theater. You had a much smaller space. And
Yeah.
because it was so close, people went there. I mean, we had we had bigger crowds, smaller space, but bigger crowds because it was so close and convenient. They
Yeah.
didn't go somewhere else.
And I have to share too that my first paid speaking ever was from Judy from being on the panel.
We
That
didn't.
one. That was all my books. Like, oh, it's my first paid speaking event. Because most times you do it for free. You speak at different places, and your book
Yeah,
sells what kind of pays you. But that was the first time I ever got paid. I almost didn't cast a check. I wanted to save it. I took a picture of it because that.
$50.
But it was. I loved it. And it was on a panel with four other authors. I think it was 4 or 5 of us. You were on the
Oh,
panel.
that was a fabulous panel. That was on marketing, it was strictly on marketing, and your specialty was social media. And
Yeah, self-publishing, social media. Yeah.
we had a romance writer there who had 200 and some books, and it was one of America's most prolific romance writers. And she was there, and she does traditional publishing.
I think she was also the keynote speaker that year too. I
No,
think.
oh, the next year she was. The next year.
Oh, okay.
And then we also had a gal there who had a book. She sold millions. Well, both of those two had sold millions of copies, but the one gal sold millions of copies of her book called "What Men Know About Women."
Oh, Cindy Cashman. Yeah, empty as a blank book.
The book was blank, and it sold millions of copies. And so, her whole shtick was marketing. And so there was, and then we had.
That's how I met her. Did you know that she, at her 30th anniversary of that book, that somebody from the Shark Tank, she did something with the Shark Tank?
I did not know.
What was the story? I think one of the women on the Shark Tank heard about her book or liked it, and she helped her do something on the 30th anniversary. That was just years ago. Isn't that funny? Yeah, basically it was just a book. It was small. It was like if years ago you'd walk into gift shops, you have a little rack of little small gifts, books you can put in stockings or gifts or presents. And hers was What Men Know About Women. And it was just a blank book. And it sold a lot of copies. It was funny.
It's such a novelty. It was just fun. And then our fourth speaker on that panel that year was Ron Lovell, who was had been a college professor who retired at the coast and wrote mystery novels. And he's written like 20, and many of them are set on the coast. So it's always fun to pick up a book and then recognize the places that are within it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was really four totally different types of marketing. And anyway, it was a great.
I was like so thankful and so honored to be there. And I know my step, that's the thing too. My step had always helped me in my book signings and anything I did there and the book there. And he came and took pictures during the panel. So some of the pictures I sent you from the panel, my stepdad took. And a lot of the pictures in my books where you show me doing an exercise or doing something, my stepdad took. So it's just kind of weird now that, him, my mom, my dad, everybody's gone, but my stepdad was a part of a lot of my stuff. And but yeah, he would always come take pictures of me at the fair. So my social media picture of me sitting at the book was of my stepdad. And so I think this year's charge for me would be there top of my spine injury. But yeah, it was really fun being on the panel. But the book fair's fun and I loved it. I hope I can be there again. But you helped start it, and I think that's great.
I was co-founder. I was co-chair for 12 years. And then I stepped down from leadership after 12 years. And this last year I was on the committee, but I was not in charge of anything. I did a lot of things, but I wasn't the one in charge. But I was the keynote speaker. And then this year I'm not going to be on the committee. I'm stepping down and letting the new guard take over because it's time. And I'm not young anymore. Strangely. Sometimes I remind myself of that. Like when I fall down in the kitchen and damage the cabinets.
I can't believe that makes so many people laugh. You have to read the story if you haven't read it because It's way funnier when you read it than her just like telling you a little piece of it. It was pretty funny. Okay, so where can people read your blog and how can people get your books?
Okay, my blog post is very simple. It's crossingsauthor.com. Crossings with an S, crossingsauthor.com. That's it.
And also when I upload this podcast, so whether you're just listening to the podcast or you're watching it in my YouTube podcast channel, all her links, I'll put all her links there too. So if you don't remember what we're saying, whether you're watching or listening, look down and you'll see them listed.
And I want to mention that this week, my my blog post that posted actually this morning, because today is a Friday. Every Friday at 6 a.m. I post my weekly blog. And this week it's called number 422, from idea to print. And it's what happened. It's got the photo, it's got a nice photo of the cover of my latest book, my Living Life to the Fullest. And then it talks about what happens from the idea to what all the different steps that go before it comes out in print. And then I have three different people who have endorsed my book, and I have their endorsements scattered in there so they can read those.
Oh, that sounds nice. So who are your endorsement people?
Well, one of our most popular authors in Florence right now is Ned Hickson. He's coming out with a new book called No Safe Harbor. And so Ned is, and I did an endorsement for Ned about 20 or 25 years ago when he was trying to get his humor column syndicated. I did an endorsement for him. So he paid me back. He did an endorsement for me. And there's another gal on the coast. Her name is Sue Fagalde Lick. And she's written poetry, nonfiction, fiction. She's a musician as well as a writer. And she also does 2 blog posts every week. And super talented gal. And I've known her for like 30 years. And we both came from the San Francisco Bay Area. We both moved up here with our husbands. Both of our husbands have passed away. And we're still here. And she's younger than I am by about 10 years. And she's a blogger, a coastal author. So we have a lot in common. So she's one of my, and then the third endorsement is from Rosemary Camozzi, who was an editor at Oregon Coast and Northwest Travel magazines with me for several years.
That's fun.
And she has written articles that have been published in Outside Magazine and the New York Times. That's awesome. That's really big. Yeah. So anyway, I have 3 wonderful, talented people who've endorsed my book.
That's exciting.
It is. It's very exciting.
So before we go to, I don't know if I remember knowing you were a school teacher. The second graders, you said, so you were at the age where they learned to read.
You know what? I taught second grade for 5 years and sort of learned how to teach during that period. And then I taught first grade for 17 years. And teaching reading is the most important thing anybody will ever learn. And a lot of our prisons are filled with people who had trouble learning to read. And so anyway, reading is the most important thing. So in my opinion, first grade is the most important grade, period. Lots of people will argue with me. I have a brother who teaches college level, or who taught college level before he retired. He used to argue with me. And there were people who, on the school board who thought first grade teachers were sort of like glorified babysitters. And when you would come to school board meetings and talk about things that you needed, they would pat you on the head and say, "That's nice, Judy." But I found that if I got the parents involved and had them come to the school board meetings and speak up, they got listened to. So you learn how to.
Yeah.
But anyway, I loved teaching first grade.
And it is true about the reading. So I can't remember. So I was in third grade, and you may know my story. I don't know if you know the story. If you read my book, I'm Not Stupid, I Have Hearing Loss. It's my story about my hearing loss and then helping people with hearing aids and stuff. But anyway, I shared that story also. So when I was in third grade, I was having a really hard time with reading and comprehension. And like the teacher would read something at that time. At those times, we'd have like these yellow papers that you'd write. The teacher would read a paragraph and we'd answer questions. And I remember I could never understand why she was asking questions and things that I didn't think she said. So I had a really hard time in reading comprehension. And when we reached out for help, what she told me was, "Oh, honey, it's because your parents are divorced." And so I was in what I have a tutor and I called it dummy reading. So even in seventh grade, I was in a special reading class when I went to junior high. English was hard. And I would read a book and knowing I was being tested on something, I couldn't even comprehend what I was reading because I was trying so hard. But it wasn't until I got to college when I realized I got a little better in high school. It depends on the teacher too.
Oh, yes.
When I got to college, because in schools they usually sit you by your last name or something. You don't just walk in and sit where you want. When I got to college, I would sit to the front, like the second row off to the left, because I felt like I learned better, and I thought I was just quirky. But I found I had a hearing loss. I was almost deaf in my left ear. And so when I started getting hearing aids and getting my hearing test and hearing aids, the first hearing doctor told me, it was here in California, then I started seeing the people in Florence when I moved there. They're still my favorite. There's a guy here near me in Newport. He said it wasn't your parents getting divorced. You've had a hearing loss probably since you were born. And you're reading lips. He goes, "Aren't you fatigued all the time?" I'm like, always. He goes, "Because I can see right now when you listen, you have this serious look on your face and you're concentrating so hard to read my lips." He said, "I just got so good at reading lips, like subconsciously, that I didn't realize I had much of a hearing loss. I knew sometimes I didn't hear, but I didn't really put it together that was really bad." And so once I got the hearing aids, things got better. And actually, I felt like I could read better. I never thought I could write a book. I didn't think I was smart enough. So when you don't hear well during those times in elementary school, you're supposed to, the really important times to learn to read, you don't hear well, it stops you from learning well. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And when I was in elementary school, our hearing test in school was, I think once a year, you go to the cafeteria, every student stands in line, you sit down for like 2 minutes, you put these earphones on, you raise your hand for like 3 or 4 beeps to send you on your way. But a real hearing test, it takes like over an hour. So they never caught up to it. I just was subconsciously compensating for it and didn't know it. So, and I don't know how well parents are involved with that with kids nowadays. I think maybe it was different back in the 70s. Because when I was in elementary school in the 70s, is that when you were teaching elementary school?
I taught from 63 to 85. So yeah.
Okay. So you're in that area. So it's, I know it's different now, but it's, those are really essential times to learn. And if you're not hearing well,
yeah,
you almost think you're stupid when you're not. You just don't hear. I had people like, I think I was in my 20s and I was dating this guy and he'd always kind of make fun of me how I talk. I'm like, I talk fine. But I couldn't, as I said the word baggie, like a baggie you put your sandwiches in. I heard it fine, but he heard it funny. And I got made fun of sometimes how I talk. Like, I don't get it because I say it the way I hear it. So I didn't know I was saying words wrong. I didn't realize that sometimes I talk too fast, but that's a part of hearing. And so, yeah, so any of you guys listening to this and you have kids in school, if they're struggling, get their ears checked. That could be part of it. You don't know. But I think sometimes that I didn't do as bad because I think the teachers spoke in the higher tones that I can hear because everybody's hearing loss is different. And I may have a teacher, my third grade teacher may have spoke and taught, her voice was just a tone that I had more of a loss in. But maybe the teacher in fifth grade, I can hear her clearer. So it kind of, so I don't think people really caught it.
Well, also most elementary teachers are women and they have the higher voices. Whereas, as you get up, you get more men teachers who have lower tone voices. That might make a difference too.
maybe I at that point I've always had fifth grade teacher was fifth grade was a woman. I can't remember where I struggled the most. I didn't really get bad grades. I didn't want to get D's and F's, but I would struggle real hard to get a C. And if I got a B or an A, it's because I worked really hard. But we had a teacher in college. It was a history class, and he would put a cassette tape of his lecture in a little cassette recorder and press play and sit there, and we'd have to take notes. Well, by the second week, like 3 people were left in class, and I said, "That's just ridiculous," because you couldn't understand them anyway.
Well,
So
you couldn't read lips.
you couldn't read the lips. You couldn't focus. Yeah, because reading lips is important where people with hearing loss. And, when during COVID times, everyone's wearing masks. A lot of people realized they had hearing loss. They didn't know it because they subconsciously put the lips in to fill in for the sounds they don't hear. The brain just automatically does this. So when you have that mask on, it's like harder, especially if it's a mask. Someone's in a mask with an accent, and they have a glass partition like at banks. I'm like, what? And everyone will say that who have a hearing loss. It just makes it harder. So yeah. So anyway, I just had to say that because elementary school is important time, and it's important time to see if your kids hear well too. So
yeah, that's where, if I had students who were having trouble, I would usually, have their, talk to the parents about the vision and the hearing, because both, you have to have everything. And I would teach through all the senses. We would write letters one student would write a letter on another student's back. So you had the tactile.
You're doing that?
Yeah, and they go into words, small little words and names and so on. And so you have the feeling, you have the tactile as well as the visual and the auditory.
Yeah, you got the sense involved. That's really smart. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I love teaching, and first graders are just the best. I mean, they say what they think. They are, they love you unconditionally. They're just fabulous students to work with.
I always wanted to be an elementary school teacher as I was growing up. Then I did hair. And then as I was thinking of college for it and everything, it was to the point where people were like, well, you can't hug the students and this, that. And like, so if a child comes to me crying, I can't put my arms on them and hug them. You're getting in trouble. It seems like all these weird rules were coming. It's like, well, I can't do that. That just sounds too messy. It doesn't sound like you can just be yourself. Because if a little kid's crying that of course you're going to hug them or hold their hand or touch their shoulder. And if it's going to be a bad thing, I'm like, oh, well, that's just, forget it. But then I ended up teaching what I teach.
I hugged kids every day, and they would, sometimes we would have little films in the afternoon, 10, 15-minute films having to do with science or whatever. Mm-hmm. And somebody would scooch up and sit on your lap. Well, that was okay. And so on. But by the time I left teaching, things were starting to change. And I was a teacher. Then I came up here and I didn't want to go all the way to University of Oregon to get credentialed to teach in Oregon. So then I got a job working as an editor at Oregon Coast and writer at Oregon Coast Magazine, of which I really had no experience. So I kind of learned on the job.
Yeah. Well, I'm really, really proud of you, and I'm glad I know you, and I'm glad I got to stay in touch with you, and I'm glad you got to be on the podcast, and
thank you.
And you helped me edit my books, and she's a really great person. So if you haven't heard of Judy, go to her website. Tell me the website again.
It's crossingsauthor.com.
Crossings with an S, author.com. Plus look down, and you can contact her to order books. Mm-hmm. Or you can contact her if you want her to speak somewhere, or reach out to her, because it's not just her coming to sell a book. She's actually teaches stuff with her books. So it's a whole package deal with her. So thank you, Judy, for being here.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed this.
And don't hang up yet when I stop. So Anything else you want to share with anybody? To share to the listeners? Going to be people you know, I'm sure, and plus people I know and people we both don't know.
Well, I had when I went to college, I thought I would be a teacher for the rest of my life. So, but when we moved up here, it didn't seem like something that was going to be very easy to do if I had to go, across the mountains over to Eugene to go to college and so on. So I worked for the magazine. I had no idea I would spend 21 years there. And so, and then when I left there, I knew I was going to write that one book, but I didn't know it would lead to other books. So, life is just sort of evolves and you never know what's going to happen. You have to just be ready to go with the flow.
And you're still teaching, you're just teaching in a different way.
That's true.
I mean, look what you taught me. You taught me about editing. You taught me different things. I learned about book festivals. I learned how to be in a panel. So you're still a teacher, just not in a classroom. You're teaching in a different way. So all the people you come across editing their books and discussing things, you're teaching them.
But when I was an editor at Oregon Coast and Northwest Travel magazines, most of the people that we had writing articles for Northwest Travel magazine were professional writers and photographers. Most of the articles that were written for Oregon Coast magazine were by a lot of people who had great stories, but didn't necessarily have writing ability. So I was able to be sort of I was sort of an encouraging, mentoring editor for many of the writers.
And that's teaching. That's all teaching.
And so all my first grade skills I was able to use.
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, I continue to teach. When I go to, actually, I did in 2019, before COVID hit, I went to a school in right outside of Coos Bay. I think it was Millicoma, one of those tiny little towns south of Coos Bay. I went to the school and I gave a program about the bridges to 4 different 4th grade classes. And that was great fun. And as each of the kids walked by as they were leaving, they all said, "Awesome, awesome," which was, just great. It was just such fun. So anyway,
And she's also a perfect example that life doesn't just, you could still have goals in life and do things at any age. It doesn't stop because you stop working as a teacher. Doesn't mean you're retired from life. It's just stop that. Now you're doing this. And it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that keeps you
young.
healthier. It keeps you young at heart and young at mind. Plus, when you have things you want to do, or you listen to your gut, or just something, an idea pops in your head, and you honor it and you reach out to it, that's really good brain care. Because my stuff's always about taking care of your body and brain care and taking care of yourself physically and mentally healthy. But that's a big part of a healthy mind, is to not always have a list of one day I'll do, one day I'll do, one day I do. You just do it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you're experiencing life, and I think that's really nice. You inspire me.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And I hope I make it to 82 and older and still writing books.
You will be writing your 60th book when you can turn 82.
And I'm really, my new one, I haven't told a lot of people about my one new one coming up. I told you before we're on here. I haven't given anyone else the details, so I'm real excited about it. And I'm hoping it will publish around June.
Good.
I'm waiting for the illustration to come back, but it's going to be it's special and it's cute, but only like 3 people know about it. I'm not ready to share till I get it going. I don't like telling people a lot of stuff until it's at that point where it's going, like you're at now. I don't like people knowing project I'm doing if I'm just starting it, like when it's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I made a mistake last year of saying my new book would be out by Christmas. Well, it's going to be out by about June, like 6 months later. So it's a good idea not to.
Yes.
I sort of call that jinxing it. You don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, I'm working with someone on one of my other books, and I thought I'd be done in February. Like, I'll be done by the end of February. It's like, no, I'm not, because I can't. It's the other one I talked about. It's a little too emotional. I can't. I don't know if I'll finish this year. It's too much. I can't. I want to stay with some things that feel good as I'm doing it more right now. I'm not ready for that other one, but I have a few projects in the air. So, but anyway, I thank you so much, Judy. And again, if when you guys are either listening to this podcast or watching the podcast, look down in the notes and we'll say all the ways to contact her, their website and everything. If you can't remember or didn't write it down, it will be there. And don't hang up yet, Judy. So thank you everyone for coming to listen to the health and wellness health show with Tracy. As always, I tell you guys to be kind to yourself, be kind to others. It's good brain care. And everyone have a great day and say bye to Judy. Bye, Judy.
And thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye.